How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Zayin, Daf 47 of Masechta Menachos. Friends, Daf 47, sheesh. Wow, who thought that kivsei atzeres and shtey Halechem would be such a tricky sugya? Okay, well, I mean, it's not that surprising, but wow, we're really getting into the details here with the shtey Halechem and the kivsei atzeres. So the first section of today, we talk about the Shechita and the zerika of the kivsei atzeres. Of course, the slaughtering of the kivsei atzeres is connected to the shtei Halechem, that a proper slaughtering and zerikas adaming of the kivsei atzeres is necessary for the quantum to be able to eat the shtei Halechem. We are going to dig deep into all of the I don't even know if there's probably more than the possibilities I will get into, but we are definitely going to get into some of the main possibilities for how the zerika and the shechita can or cannot be done, and what implications that has for the eatability of the shtei Halechem. Next, we will discuss if shtei Halechem can be eaten when the zerika is not lishmah. Oh boy. So if you slaughter the kivsei atzeres lishmah, but the zerika sadam is shelo lishmah, oh boy, can you eat the shtei Halechem? Sheesh. I'm feeling it's feeling tricky. Even just giving the chapter titles is tricky. If kivsei atzeres can be eaten if the shtei Halechem gets lost, oh boy. Okay, well, right, we had learned that after the shechita of the kivsei atzeres, so at that point everybody agrees that the kivsei atzeres and the shtei Halechem get locked in, so to speak. And if the shtei Halechem get lost, so we say that the kivsei atzeres have to go out to the base HaSreif and be burnt. Is there any way around that? That's what we're going to discuss. Sheesh, this is tricky korbanos stuff. Oh boy, what's happening? When? What? Before what? Oh boy, this is going to be summed off, friends. It's going to be summed off. Well, there's only one way to get to the other side, friends. And it starts now. Friends, our journey begins at the very top of Daf Mem Zayin, Omid Aleph, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis start kivsei atzeres. The kivsei atzeres, the two sheep that are in their first year, that are offered on Shavuot in conjunction with the shtei Halechem, the kivsei atzeres, ein mikadshin es halechem ela b'shchita. Okay, the kivsei atzeres are mikadesh the lechem, as described in the first Mishnah in the 4th chapter of the tractate of Shekalim that we learned several years ago. That was a very difficult Masechta. Anyways, so I'm going to roll up my sleeves quickly. I didn't think that I would need to, but I think it might be a good idea. Anyways, so the first, so Perek Dal Mishnah Aleph from Masechta Shekalim describes that the shtei Halechem were purchased with the communal funds, right? We just had Parsha Shekalim the other Shabbos 2 weeks ago, where we described the donation of the machzis a shekel that was used, right, for the Trumas Halishka to purchase korbanos, including the shtei Halechem. And therefore, the shtei Halechem has kedushas damim, which will come up on today's daf. It automatically is hektish. However, in order for it to become kedushas haguf, so the offering of the kivsei atzeres are what then makes the shtei Halechem into kedushas haguf, makes it kodshe kodshim, makes it unable to leave the azar. And then there's the next step, which is also then making it permitted to the kohanim to be able to eat. So the shtei Halechem accomplishes both, the kivsei atzeres accomplishes both of those things. When done properly, the kivsei atzeres is mikadesh the shtei Halechem to make them kodshe kodshim, and is also matur them to the kohanim to be able to eat it. So says the Braise Tanu Rabbanan, kivsei atzeres, that the kivsei atzeres, the shavuos sheep, ein mekadshin es halechem ela b'shchita, that when they are slaughtered, it's mekadesh the lechem to make them kedushas haguf, to make them kodshe kodshim. Otherwise, they're just hektish kedushas domim, which we're going to be getting into. Keitzad haso shachatan lishman v'zarek dam lishman hachitov. If the shtei halechem are slaughtered and zerikas hadam lishmah, optimal. That's the best. So kadesh halechem. So the shtei halechem are kadosh, and they are also allowed to be eaten by the kohanim. Shachatan shelo lishman v'zarek daman shelo lishman. Now, if the opposite is the case, that the kivsei atzeres, it's so hard to remember when I want to say kivsei atzeres, to say kivsei atzeres, and to say shtei halechem, to say shtei halechem. It's hard enough to remember what they're called. I'm always saying well, what's that called again? The bread thing, the shtei halechem. So not only do I have to think about is it shtei halechem, right? To remember shtei halechem and kivsei atzeres, I also have to remember to say the right one. It's tricky. I'm probably going to mess it up. But so just be on the lookout. If I say kivsei atzeres when you think I should have said, what's the thing I'm thinking of? Shtei halechem. You might be right. I'm obviously going to make my best effort to be correct about the words that I'm saying, but it's tricky because they're so intermingled and so hard to remember what each one is, I think. Anyways, where were we? So if the opposite is true, that the kivsei atzeres were both slaughtered and zerikad, shelo lishmah, not with the intention of kivsei atzeres. I hope I said kivsei atzeres and not shtei halechem, because that's what we're talking about, kivsei atzeres. So if they are, it's entirely shelo lishmah, so then in that case, the shtei halechem never become kadosh with kedushas saguf, never become kachim, and therefore are also not allowed to be eaten by the kohanim, right? Kedushas damim, right? Something that's hektish is also ba'ana. Otherwise, it's me'ilah. You can't eat that. The only way you'd be able to eat it, as is going to come up on today's daf, is to be poded, right? If you're makdish something, if you have something that's kadosh kedushas damim, that has monetary value, so you can transfer its value onto money, and then the thing becomes permitted. So if we have the shtei halechem, so if the kivsei atzeres are slaughtered and zerikas hadam shelo lishma, so then the shtei halechem never become kadosh with kedushas saguf, and they just remain kedushas damin. And then what you do is you're podeh the breads, and they become chulin, and then you can eat them as chulin. Okay, but they aren't going to be the shtei halechem. So lo kadosh halechem, the lechem is not the shtei halechem is not shtei halechem. Is not kadosh. Now, here's where the trickiness comes in, and this is basically going to be the concern for most of today's daf. Shachatan lishman v'zarek daman shelo lishman. If the shechita of the kivsei atzeres was lishmah, okay, but the zerikas hadam was shelo lishmah. So now what happens? Halechem kadosh ve'eno kadosh divrei Rebbe. So Rebbe's opinion is that the shtei halechem are kadosh and eno kadosh. We're going to have to explain what that means. Give me a machlokas Abaye and Rava what that means. Kadosh ve'eno kadosh. But says Rebbe, it's not kadosh, but it's not kadosh. We'll have to see what that means. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, it is not kadosh. La'olam ve'eno kadosh ad sheyishchot lishman v'yizrok daman lishman. Says Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, in order for the shtei halechem to be kadosh at all, says Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, in order for the shtei halechem to be kadosh at all, the shechita and zerikas hadam of the kivsei atzeres must be lishmah. Our scenario fails to meet that requirement since only the shechita was lishmah, but the zerikas hadam was not lishmah, and therefore it is not kadosh at all, according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Chaver, remember this. Remember this. It is important for today's daf. According to Rebbe, the shtei halechem, when the kivsei atzeres are slaughtered lishmah, but the zerikas hadam is shelo lishmah, and so the shtei halechem, according to Rebbe, is kadosh. kadosh, kadosh ve'eno kadosh. But it is some level of kedusha. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, no level of kedusha other than kilu kedushas damin. But it's not kedushas aguf in any way. It's certainly not permitted for the kohanim to eat it. My time of the Rebbe, how come Rebbe says it's kadosh ve'eno kadosh dichsiv? Because the pasuk says veso ayil. This is a pasuk by the Nazir. The Nazir, of course, when he completes his nazirus, he brings a chatos, an ola, and a shlomim. We're talking about the shlomim right now. Veso ayil, the el nazir, which is a ram, and it's a shlomim. Yaise zebach shlomim laHashem will be made as an offering, as a slaughtered offering, as a sacrifice, a shlomim sacrifice laHashem to God. Al salamatzas. Of course, when it comes to the nazir and the his commencement exercises, when he's done with his nazirus, so when he brings the el nazir, when he brings the ram, when he brings his shlomim, that is together with breads, just like the kivsei atzeres are together with the shtey halechem. So similarly, the el nazir is together with a sal hamatzis, which contains in it chalis, which are not bread, and rokiks, wafers. So the pasuk says ve'esa ayil, this el nazir, this shlomim, yaise zevach will be a sacrifice, shlomim laHashem al salamatzis. Remember to say the shechita, it's the zevach, the zerika, the shechita. Mikadsha is what's mikadesh, the matzis, the breads, and here too it's the shechita of the kivsei atzeres that is mikadesh, the shtey halechem. Even if it's kadosh ve'eno kadosh, not completely kadosh, and again we have to explain what that means, but it will make it kadosh to some extent. For Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, now according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, yaise, right, the pasuk says v'sa'ayil yaise zevach shlomim. So yaise kol asiyosav, all of its asiyas, all of its doings, not just the shechita, but the zerika sadam as well, need to be lishmah. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, if even the zerika sadam is not lishmah, but even if the shechita was lishmah, but the zerika sadam is not lishmah, so then no dice. The shtei halechem in that case is not kadosh whatsoever. It's kedushas damim, but not kedushas aguf at all. The Rebbe Nami Oksiv yaise. According to Rebbe, it also says yaise, to do. So he says, look, Rebbe will say iksiv zevach yaise kidika omart. If it said zevach yaise, so I'll say it means that slaughter it and do all the stuff that you got to do. Slaughter is shechita and zerika sadam. Hashta dichsiv yaise zevach bameh yaise. How do you? What are you supposed to yaise? What are you supposed to do? Bizvicha, you're supposed to slaughter it. So the slaughtering is the definition of what the asiya is, and therefore, so long as you slaughter it lishmah, it will be at least some level of kadosh, according to Rebbe. For Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, haksiv zevach, according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who says that the zerika sadam also needs to be lishmah. What about the fact that the apostle says zevach, to slaughter it? Hahu mibai lelich Rabbi Yochanan. He understands that to in the way that Rabbi Yochanan explains obviously Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon was older than Rabbi Yochanan, but he would be aligned with what Rabbi Yochanan says. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, akol modim shetzarich sheyei lohem. It's possible that they overlapped somewhat, but anyways. But Rabbi Yochanan was an Amora, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon was a Tana. Shetzarich sheyei lechem b'shas shechita. What he learns from Zevach is that at the time of the zvicha, the shtei halechem needs to be there already. It needs to be in the picture, right? That at the time that you slaughter the kivsei atzeres, the shtei halechem already need to be there. They can't come later. Again, everybody agrees. Shetzarich sheyei lechem b'shas shechita. That at the time of the shechita, there needs to be the shtei halechem need to already be there. Okay, fine. That is the machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon when it comes to kivsei atzeres that were slaughtered lishmah zerika sadam shelo lishmah. Now, Rebbe had said that in that case, when the kivsei atzeres are slaughtered lishmah, but zerika sadam shelo lishmah, Rebbe had said that the shtey halechem. Sorry, whenever I pause, I'm trying to remember that phrase, shtey halechem. I should probably write it down. Let me write it down somewhere. I'm going to write it down. Give me a second. And that way, okay, all capital letters. Shtey halechem. Great. And what's the other one? Kivsei atzeres. Okay, hopefully now that I kind of wrote those in bold letters, I don't know if they're big enough, but okay. At least if I'm looking for it, I got them written right there now. Okay. Anyways, so what were we saying? So when it comes to the shtey halechem, okay, great. Yeah, I think this might be good that I have them written here. So when it comes to the kivsei atzeres, so Rebbe had said that if they are slaughtered lishmah, but zerika sadam shelo lishmah, so Rebbe had said that the shtey halechem, this is working good. Okay, it's good that I have it written here. So the shtey halechem is kadosh and not kadosh. So what does it mean that it's kadosh and not kadosh? We're now going to see a machloikes Abaye and Rove. My kadosh ve'enu kadosh. Abaye Omar says Abaye kadosh ve'enu gomer. Okay, it means kadosh but not completely kadosh. Rav Amar says Rav kadosh ve'enu nitar. It is kadosh but not mutar la'achila. My benau is nafkamina. Ike benau the mitpas pidyono. Can you be poded? So now, chevre, according to Rashi, the text that we have in our Gemara is wrong. Listen to what I'm reading. La Abaye toughis pidyono, the Rava low toughis pidyono. You got to switch that around. What did we just read? So let's read it again. Abaye Omar. So what's kadosh ve'enu kadosh? Abaye Omar kadosh ve'enu gomor. What that means is, according to Abaye, it is kedushas damim, basically like Reb Shimon, like Reb Elazar Reb Shimon is saying. The Gemara is going to ask, according to Abaye, what is the difference between Rebbe and Reb Elazar Reb Shimon then? But what Abaye is saying is that kadosh ve'enu kadosh, it means that it's kadosh kedushas damim, but not kadosh kedushas haguf. Okay. Rava Amar says Rava kadosh ve'enu nitar. It's kadosh kedushas haguf. It's mamish kadosh. It's kachei kachim, but it's kachei kachim that have not been permitted to the kohanim. That when it was slaughtered, it became kachei kachim according to Rava, as explaining Rebbe. And because there was no proper zerika sadam, there was never a shaset to the kohanim. It never became permitted for the kohanim to eat it. So it's kadosh kedushas haguf according to Rava. However, ve'enu nitar, it's not permitted to be eaten. The kohanim are not allowed to eat it. My Benai, what's the nafkamina between Abaye and Rove? Ike Benai, the nafkamina is limitpas pinyonu. Can you be poded? Kedushas damim, you can be poded. Kedushas haguf, you can't be poded. Let me just make sure my volume's off. Okay. Kedushas damim. So, for example, if I want to, let's say I get a new computer, and I don't need my old computer, so I donate it to the Beis HaMikdash. I makdish my computer to the Beis HaMikdash. So we could simply be podet. We could transfer its value onto money, and then the money becomes kadosh, and you give the money to the Beis HaMikdash, and the computer, I guess if the Gizbar can always sell my computer if they don't need it, they already have computers, so then they could sell it, and no big deal. Something that's kedushas damim, you can sell, no big deal. A korban you can't just sell, as we know. A korban, if you have a korban chatas, for example, so, or I guess in this case, we're talking about the shtey halechem. So the shtey halechem, if it's kadosh kedushas haguf, you can't be podeh, right? Just like a korban, you can't be podeh, right? If I set aside an animal as a korban, I have to offer it as a korban. I can't just say, you know what, I'm going to transfer it onto money and it won't be good. No, it's kadosh kedushas haguf, kedushas mizbech. You have to offer it as a korban. But kedushas damim, you can be podeh. So what's the nafkamina? Well, when it comes here, so for example, this is important. Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, it's going to be important for today, it's going to be important for tomorrow. Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, so if you have the great, I have it written over here. Kivsei atzeres. Oh, this is the smartest thing I've ever done. If you have the kivsei atzeres, now what was I talking about though? So according to Rabbi Shimon, if you have the kivsei atzeres, and they were slaughtered lishmah, but zerika sadam chelo lishmah, Rabbi Shimon says that they are only kedushas damim. So nish giferlach. So what if you want to eat them? Just be to them. Transfer the value onto money. The money is holy, and the breads are not. You can eat them. However, according to Rave, as he explains Rebbe, if the kivsei atzeres are slaughtered lishma, but the zerika sadam is shelo lishma, so Rave would say that the shtey halechem are kadosh kedushas haguf, but because the zerika sadam was shelo lishma, they never became permitted for the Kohanim to eat. So you're basically there's basically nothing you can do. You just have to burn them. I mean, I don't think there's anything else that you can do, right? Because it's kadosh kedushas haguf. You need the kivsei atzeres, the kivsei atzeres to be slaughtered and zerika sadam properly in order to be matir them to the Kohanim to eat. But in this case, they're basically stuck. So now what we're saying, the difference according to Abaye and Rava, therefore, is that according to Abaye, kadosh ve'eno kadosh that Rebbe is talking about, according to Abaye, it just means that it's kadosh kedushas damim, which means that you can be poded and then be able to transfer its value into money. Then you can eat these shtei halechem. Whereas according to Rava, you can't. So again, my benai, what's the difference? The difference is lemitpas pidyono. Can you be poded? L'abaye toughest pidyono. According to Abaye, you can. It's kedushas damim. You can be poded it and then eat it. L'Rave lo toughest pidyono. According to Rava, who says that it's kadosh kedushas haguf, you can't be poded because you can't be poded things that are kedushas haguf. Bishlam, the Rava says the Gemara, I understand Rava, Hanu Diika ben Rebbe Rebbe Lazar Reb Shimon. Okay, I understand according to Rava, I understand the difference between Rebbe and Rebbe Lazar Reb Shimon. I understand the machlokas. According to Rebbe, when you slaughter the kivsei atzeres lishmah, but the zerika sadam is shelo lishmah. So according to Rebbe, as explained by Rava, it's kadosh the shtei halechem are kadosh kedushas ha guf. According to Rebbe Lazar Reb Shimon, nisht, it's only kadosh kedushas damim. But according to Abaye, who says that also according to Rebbe, the shtei halechem are only kadosh kedushas damim, just like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says. So Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon then are saying the same thing. Ela Abaye, but according to Abaye, ma'ika ben Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. What's the difference between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar? What's the difference between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon? The nafkamina is, can it be possible biyotze that Rebbe would say that the shtei halechem, that when you have the kivsei atzeres, they are slaughtered lishma, but zerika sadam shelo lishma. So Rebbe would say that the shtei halechem are kadosh ve'eno kadosh, as explained by Abaye, that means that they are only kadosh v'kedushas damim, but even so, even though they're only kadosh kedushas damim, if you take them out of the azara, they will be possible biyotze. Masha'enken, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon would say they're purely kadosh kedushas damim. Of course, you can take them out of the azara. They aren't kachim. They aren't kedushas haguf. They don't have to remain in the azara. You can take them out of the azara, according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. According to Rebbe, though, as explained by Abaye, you would have to keep them in the azara. All right, friends. Now we get to a little bit of I wouldn't say a little bit. We get to a tricky part of the daf, which is going to be the next big chunk. Essentially, is going to get us very close to the end. After this, there'll basically be one more, I wouldn't say easy part, but a smaller part. Now, this section is if shtei halechem can be eaten when zerika is not lishmah. Okay, so let me get back to where I have my big bold words. If the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered lishmah, but the zerika was shelo lishmah, can you eat the shtei halechem? Now, you might be thinking, didn't we just discuss this ad nausea? I don't think that's a nice description, but delete that. Unbrain that. Anyways, let us jump into it. Okay. Ba'amine Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak May Reb Chia bar Abba, Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak asks Reb Chia bar Abba kivsei atzeres. When it comes to the kivsei atzeres, sheshchaton lishmah, that were slaughtered lishmah. Okay, so far so good. V'zarek daman shelo lishmah. But problem, the zerika Adam was shelo lishmah. Also Halechem. What about the shtey Halechem? Ma'obachila, can you eat it? So now the Gemara asks the questions that all of you are asking yourselves. Aliba deman. I don't understand who this question is addressed to. If addressed to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, of course you cannot eat it. It is kedushas damim. It's hektish. It's asur ba'ana. Of course you cannot eat the shtey Halechem. Ha'omar zerika hi de mekadsha. It is the zerika that would be mekadesh to be kedushas aguf, to be kodshe kodshim, to then possibly be mutter, but whatever. But according to him, it's just simply kedushas damim, and it was purchased with the trumas halishka. It's hektish. It's kedushas damim. It's also ba'ana. Of course, it's forbidden to be consumed, to be eaten by the Kohanim. What's the question? The Rebbe, and if it's according to Rebbe who says it's kadosh ve'eno kadosh, same thing. Bein l'Abai, bein l'Rava, kadosh ve'eno nitar. Both according to Abai who says it's kedushas damim and therefore can't be eaten because it's hektish and asur ba'ana, or according to Rava who says it's kedushas aguf but still ve'eno nitar, but it's not. It never became permitted to be eaten by the Kohanim. So both according to Rebbe and according to Rebbe, as explained by both Abai and Rava, as well as according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, everyone would say, no way, Jose, you can't eat the shtey Halechem. Ela aliba dehai tana. Friends, you ready? Get your brains ready. I don't know if there's anything you got to do to any switches you got to flip, any screwdrivers and wrenches you got to wrench. But put that brain in working order. And I'm obviously talking to myself here. Okay. Ela aliba dehai tana. It's according to this Tana that Reb Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak addresses his question. The Tani Avua de Reb Yirmiyah bar Abba, that the father of Reb Yirmiyah bar Abba taught in a brisa, Shtei Halechem sheyatzu ben Shechita lizrika. Okay. Shtei Halechem. Okay, so basically you have the kivsei atzeres. The kivsei atzeres were slaughtered. Now, prior to their zerika Adam, however, the shtei Halechem left the azar. They were yotzei. They became posel biyotzei. V'zorak daman shel kvasim, and then there was zerika Adam for the kivsei atzeres. However, chutz lizmanan, the zerika Adam was with machshavas pigol, with machshavas chutz lizmanan. Friends, how is that for a colorful scenario? Again, the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered, and then the shtei Halechem became posel biyotzei, and then the zerika Adam was done for the kivsei atzeres, but with machshavas chutz lizmanu. I don't know, to eat the meat chutz lizmanu, whatever it is, or maybe to eat the lechem chutz lizmanu. With machshavas pigul. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer, ein balechem mishum pigul. Rabbi Eliezer says that there is no pigul for the shtei Halechem. No pigul. Again, the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered. The shtei Halechem was posel biyotzei. Then the kivsei atzeres, there was zerika Adam, but it was with machshavas chutz lizmanu, machshavas pigul. Says Rabbi Eliezer that zerika Adam is irrelevant, and there's no pigul for the shtei Halechem. Rabbi Kiva Omer yesh belechem mishum pigul. Rabbi Kiva says that the zerika Adam, with the intention of chutz lizmanu, will make the shtei Halechem pigul. So the machlokes in Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva of will this zerika Adam of the kivsei atzeres with machshavas chutz lizmanu make the shtei Halechem pigul or not? The shtei Halechem that already been yotzei after Shechita but before zerika. V'amar Rav Sheshes. Now Rav Sheshes tells us about this brisa. Hani tanoi, that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva ki Rebbe Svirlu, hold like Rebbe, the Amar who said, Shechita mikadsha, that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres was mikadesh the shtey Halechem. So meaning, unlike Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who says that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres without zerikas hadam, in that case, the shtey Halechem remains kedushas domim, and as we said earlier, it can be taken in and out of the azara at will. There would be no issue with yotzei. However, Rav Sheshes says that both according to Rabbi Eliezer and according to Rabbi Akiva, they understand it like Rebbe does, which is that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres makes the shtei Halechem kadosh with kedushas haguf, and therefore yotzei is a thing. Therefore, when the shtei Halechem are taken out of the azara, they become pasul, which means that at the time of the zerikas hadam of the kivsei atzeres, which was with machshavas chutz lizmanu, the shtei Halechem were already pasul because they were yotzei. So there was already so the shtei Halechem were already pasul at the time. Miu Rabbi Eliezer, the timing Rabbi Eliezer is consistent with his reasoning in Masechta Me'ilah. We're going to see a Mishnah from Masechta Me'ilah in just a moment that we've seen before. The Omar Ein Zrika Moelis Liyotzei, that Rabbi Eliezer says that Zrika is irrelevant in the context of Yotzei, as we're going to see in a second in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva, the time Rabbi Akiva is consistent with his opinion, which is the Omar Zrika Moelis Liyotzei, that Zrika is effective for Yotzei Ditnan, as we learned in a Mishnah in Masechta Me'ilah. Emure Kodshim Kalim. So if you have the emurim of kodshim kalim, now a kodshim kalim is mammon bailim. A kodshim kalim, it belongs to the owner. There's no din me'ilah by a kodshim kalim. If you have a shlomim, or if you bring a shlomim to Beis Mikdash, it's kodshim kalim. There is no din me'ilah. You can get benefit from the animal, and the only point at which there becomes a din me'ilah when it comes to kodshim kalim is post zerikas hadam. Post zerikas hadam, the emurim, the parts that are burnt on the mizbeach, they become kodshim, and there's a din me'ilah by the emurim. That is the only portion of a kodshim kalim, that is the only point with a kodshim kalim that there is any din me'ilah. I could push it here, the power wash is outside. It rained all night. I can't imagine what they need to wash. So when it comes to kodshim kalim, kodshim kalim initially, from the time that they are set aside to be korbanos. So if you go to a sheep and say you're going to be a korban shlamim, now, if, by the way, you said you're going to be a korban chatas, immediately becomes kadosh with kedushas haguf, din me'ilah, everything. Kodshim kalim, nonetheless, a korban shlamim, for example, you say, sheep over there, you're going to be a korban shlamim, and the sheep's like, yes, what's that? Anyways, so it is not kadosh kedushas haguf. There is no din me'ilah. It is mamon bailim. Now, you bring the shlamim to the Beis Hamikdash, you slaughter it, it is still mammon bailim. There's no din me'ilah yet. Only after the zerikas adam, at that point, the emurim are now to be burnt on the mizbech. At that point, the emurim, the parts that are burnt on the mizbech, become kodshim, become kadosh, and there is a din me'ilah now for them. The shaila is, what if after the shechita, when there was no element of the animal was yet kadosh, no element of the animal yet had any din me'ilah, the emurim then were yotzei chutz la'azar, and then afterwards, even if the emurim came back into the azar, right, but they were yotzei, they became pasul biyotzei, and then afterwards there was zerikas hadam. The question is this zerikas hadam effective to make these emurim, which became pasul biyotzei, have a din of me'ilah? Normally, zerikas hadam would make these emurim have a din me'ilah. The question is, now that the emurim were pasul biyotzei, does the zerikas hadam still have the same effect of making the emurim have a din of me'ilah. So Rabbi Akiva says, yes, the zerika sadam is effective. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, the zerika sadam is not effective. And that aligns with our machlokas over here, that you have the kivsei atzeres that were slaughtered. The shtey Halechem then became posel be yotzei. Then the zerika sadam was zerika sadam with the machshavas pigul. Rabbi Eliezer, who says that the zerika sadam after yotzei is irrelevant, says that there's no din pigul for the shtey Halechem. Rabbi Akiva, who says that the zerika sadam is relevant when it comes to yotzei, says that the zerika sadam here is relevant and that the shtei Halechem is pigul. Okay, these align. Now, the Tanam, we learned in a Mishnah in Me'ilah, Emuri Kachim Kalam, the Emurim of a Kachim Kalam, Sheyotsu, that were possible yotzei post Shechita, pre-zerika. Rabbi Eliezer almost says, Rabbi Eliezer, Ein May'alin Boyem. The subsequent zerikas hadam does not make the emurim have a status of me'ilah. Well, I can't remember what of the word I was thinking of, but anyways, the subsequent zerikas adam does not make these emurim me'ilah-able, kadosh, have it in me'ilah. Ve'ein chayav nalem mishum pigul v'noser v'tamei, and these emurim will not have any chiyuv in the context of pigul, in the context of noser, in the context of tamei. Rabbi Akiva says the opposite. Mayalin boy, the subsequent zerika sadam is effective, and these emurim that were yotzei do have a din me'ilah. V'chayav nalem mishum pigul v'noser v'tamei. So the shaila is now, how does the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva from me'ilah, and in terms of the scenario where the shtei Halechem were yotzei, and then there was zerika with machshavas pigul, this machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says no din pigul by the shtei Halechem. Rabbi Akiva says yes din pigul by the shtei Halechem. How would that apply to our scenario where the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered, and then the zerika sadam was shalol lishmah? Would the zerika sadam be considered to be effective to allow the Kohanim to eat the shtei Halechem? What do we say? Mi de zerikas pigul kav'a lelechem bepigul biyotzei kibasar. So do we say that according to Rabbi Akiva, who said that when in the scenario where the kivsei atzeres were, right, in the brisa that was quoted, where the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered, and then the shtei Halechem were posel be yotzei, and then there was zerikas adam of the kivsei atzeres with machshavas chutz lezmanu, and we said that the zerikas adam was nonetheless effective, and the shtei Halechem have a status of pigul. Would we apply that the same way? Right, so again, midazrikas pigul, from the fact of that zerikas adam with machshavas pigul, kava lelechem, where koveya the shtei Halechem be pigul, that they now have a din of pigul be yotzei, even though they were already yotzei. So kibasar, in the same way that it affects the bread and the shtei Halechem, in the same way that it would affect the kivsei atzeres themselves. So zerika shalol lishmah. Let's say that the same thing in our scenario, where there's a zerika shalol lishmah nami, sharia lelechem will be effective, even though it's shalol lishma, it will be effective to allow would we say that according to Rabbi Akiva, the zerikas adam of the kivsei atzeres shalol lishma would be effective to allow the Kohanim to eat the shtei Halechem. O dilma, or perhaps lechumra minan lekula lo amrinan, or perhaps we only say that the zerikas adam is effective when it's lechumra, to say, for example, that the shtei Halechem have a din of pigul. But to allow the shtei Halechem to be eaten by the Kohanim, I don't know that we would say that the zerikas adam shalol lishma would be effective to allow the Kohanim to eat the shtei Halechem. That's our question. Would Rabbi Akiva say that the zerikas adam shalol lishma would be effective to allow the Kohanim to eat the shtei Halechem, or not? Maskif Rav Papa has a kasha on the way that we are understanding this brisa, when the Shtei Halechem was Yotzei, and then the zerikas Adam was with Machshavas Pigul. Rav Papa argues, Umimai dechi isnu avroi plige. Rav Papa says, 1 second, the way that we are understanding that Braise, where the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered, and then the Shtei Halechem were Yotzei. And what it sounds like, the way that we're understanding the Braise, is that then, while the Shtei Halechem were still outside of the Azara, there was the zerikas Adam of the kivsei atzeres with Machshavas Pigul, while the Shtei Halechem were still outside of the Azara. But 1 second. Why are we assuming that the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva is when the Shtei Halechem were outside of the Azara? We're still outside of the Azara. Dilma, perhaps, but the isnu avroi. Perhaps, look, if the zerikas Adam was happening when the Shtei Halechem were outside of the Azara, everyone would agree. Even Rabbi Akiva would say that the zerikas Adam would be ineffective if the Shtei Halechem were outside of the Azara and were puzzle. Rather, suggests Rabbi Papa, that we're talking about where the Shtei Halechem were Yotzei from the Azara, but then came back into the Azara. Rabbi Eliezer savar la ki Rebbe, so Rabbi Eliezer holds like Rebbe, which is that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres made the Shtei Halechem kadosh with kedushas haguf, and therefore when they were left, meaning either they're kadosh with kedushas haguf according to Rava, but even according to Bias, says kedushas davam still can be possible yotzei, right? So either way, according to Rebbe, if the Shtei Halechem were yotzei from the Azar, they became possible. The Omar Shechita Mikadsha, the Rebbe says that Shechita is Kadosh, Veinu Kadosh, but basically either way it'll be possible Yotzei. Vivslu B'Yotzei, it's going to be possible Yotzei, and therefore even if they came back into the Azara, it makes no difference. They're already possible B'Yotzei, and therefore Rabbi Eliezer says that the zerikas Adam with Machshavas Pigul is ineffective because the Shtei Halechem were already possible at the time. For Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, and maybe Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, Damar Shechita lo mekadsha v'lo mivsle biyotzei. That Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres alone is not enough to be mekadesh the Shtei Halechem, and therefore when it was yotzei, it didn't matter. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says it's kedushas damim; it can go in and out of the Azara. It doesn't have to be in the Azara, so it wasn't actually possible biyotzei, and that is why Rabbi Akiva says that the zerikas Adam that was done with Machshavas Pigul is going to be zerikas Adam with Machshavas Pigul, and the Shtei Halechem in that case will be Pigul. But, however, in our case of Shalol lishmah, that the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered lishmah, but then the zerikas Adam was Shalol lishmah. If the zerikas Adam was Shalol lishmah, so then maybe it would not be effective for the Shtei Halechem. Right? If the zerikas Adam was not for the kivsei atzeres, well then it wouldn't allow the Shtei Halechem to be eaten. So so what do we say? Akiva ki Rebbe Sruli. So the Gemara questions this premise that we said that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. The Gemara says, 1 second. I understand if Rabbi Akiva holds like Rebbe, who says that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres makes the Shtei Halechem kadosh. So now I'm going to switch around a few words. I'm going to switch things around until the end of the next line, and I'm going to read Asi Shechita Mikadshelu. So the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres is Mekadosh the Shtei Halechem. V'cheven the Kadshelu, and since the Shtei Halechem is already kadosh, the Kadshelu Shechita, Asya zerika, that's the last word of the next line. Now comes the zerikas Adam, kavlu b'pigul, and makes the Shtei Halechem pigul. El'i omad kurab Elazar Reb Shimon svirule. But if you say that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, damar zvicha lo mikadsha, that Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says that the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres is not mikadesh the shtei halechem. It is not kadosh kedushas guf. It's only kedushas damim. Well, then, if it's not actually kedushas guf, it's not kedushas mizbeach. So then, zerikas pigul mi mikadsha. How would the zerikas adam of pigul be mikadesh the shtei halechem if they're only kadosh with kedushas damim? V'amar of Gidol Marav. After all, if Gidol says the name of Rab zerikas pigul, that the zerikas adam of pigul isn't going to bring to me'ilah. Nor is it motzi me'ilah. That when it comes to kachim kalim, the zerika of pigul is not going to. This zerika of pigul is not going to make it have a din of me'ilah. It's not going to be motzi me'ilah. Bibsar kachim. When it comes to kachim, which have a din of me'ilah, the zerika isn't going to release their din me'ilah, because when it comes to kachim, the zerika sadam, once it has shas to the Kohanim, it no longer has a din me'ilah. That is a me'ilah thing. I don't want to get caught up in it right now. What do we want to say? So we say, based on Rav Gidol Marav, that if the shtei halechem, like Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon would say, only has a din of kedushas damim, the zerikas adam with a machshavas pigul that Rabbi Akiva is talking about would not actually make the shtei halechem have a din of pigul if they were only at kedushas damim. To which the Gemara says, Lavi Tosef of Gidol Marav, don't bring me rayas and kashas from Gidol Marav, because after all, Rav Gidol Marav was ultimately rejected. Where was Rav Gidol Marav? In Masechta Me'ilah. We're going to learn about Masechta Me'ilah in probably about a year from now or so. Anyways, Rav Gidol Marav was ultimately rejected, so therefore don't ask me kashas from him. And therefore, where are we? We're back to Rav Papa's suggestion that maybe Rab Akiva holds like Rab Elazar Reb Shimon, and therefore if he holds like Rab Elazar Reb Shimon, so then we wanted to say that maybe the din of, well, in our scenario where the kivsei atzeres were slaughtered and then the zerika sadam was shelo lishmah, maybe the shtei halechem would be ineffective for the shtei halechem. The shtei halechem would not be allowed to be eaten. And essentially it is inconclusive. It's not exactly clear who Reb Shmuel bar Reb Yitzchak was asking according to. We said that clearly it's not according to Rebbe or according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, because according to them, right? What was the question? The question was that if you have kivsei atzeres that was slaughtered lishmah, but then the zerika sadam was shelo lishmah, can the Kohanim eat the shtei halechem? We said according to Rebbe, both according to how Abai and Rav explain it, no, the Kohanim would not be able to, and also according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, it is kedushas damim, and it would not be allowed to be eaten either. We then had maybe said that it could be that Rav, what was his name? Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak was asking according to Rabbi Akiva, who says that the zerikas adam by the shtei halechem that was yotzei, and then the zerikas adam does make pigul, so maybe it would be effective to allow you to eat the bread. The Kohanim to eat the shtei halechem. We said, yeah, but maybe he actually holds like a Reb Shimon. If he holds like a Reb Shimon, then it wouldn't allow it. It's basically unclear exactly who he's asking according to. It's unclear exactly what if you would be allowed to eat this bread. So I assume that there's not enough information to allow us to say that in that case that Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak is asking about the Kohanim would be able to eat the shtei halechem. It is certainly inconclusive. And finally, the final section of today's daf, if there's any way that the kivsei atzeres can be eaten if the shtei halechem get lost. We, of course, learned yesterday from Rabbi Yochanan that everyone agrees that after the shechita of the kivsei atzeres, I got to get back my kivsei atzeres shtei halechem bold words. I've been referencing them the entire daf. What a great idea to just get those keywords right there. I've been peeking at them the entire daf every time I needed to say them. What a great idea. I'll give myself a pat on the back afterwards. So we had learned yesterday, according to Reb Yochanan, that everyone agrees that after the kivsei atzeres are slaughtered, meaning, even quickly just to back up before that, 2 days ago, we had seen a machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon ben Nanis about what if you only have the shtei halechem? What if you only have the kivsei atzeres? But yesterday, we saw it from Yochanan that everyone agrees nonetheless that if you had both the Shtei Halechem and the kivsei atzeres at the time that the kivsei atzeres was slaughtered, so then if the Shtei Halechem gets lost, so then the kivsei atzeres will have to, you can't offer them. You can't go weiter. You have to burn them. Yetzer the beis hasreifa. The shaila is there any way that maybe we could salvage the kivsei atzeres that we don't have to burn them? Maybe we can eat them somehow. So says the Gemara, but Amine, Rabbi Yirmiyah asks Rabbi Zera, kivsei atzeres, when it comes to the kivsei atzeres, Shechita and lishmah, that they were slaughtered lishmah, ve'avad halechem, but the shtei halechem flew the coop, got lost. Ma'ush yizrok adam shelo lishmah. You hear the shaila? Rabbi Yirmiyah suggests maybe what we could do is, what if the kivsei atzeres are then zerika sadamd shelo lishmah? Now, if there's zerika sadamd shelo lishmah, then maybe we could just treat them as like a shlamim. And if they just treat it right, if we have machsheves, shelo lishmah as a shlamim, so then only of course chatas and korban pesach are posel shelo lishmah. So the korban would be kosher. It would be posel as a shtey, as kivsei atzeres, but it could just be a shlamim. Then maybe we can at least eat the meat instead of having to just burn it. Then we can eat the meat. Zera responds, does that make any sense? Is there anything she'eino kosher lishmo that if you do it properly, it's unkosher, right? The kivsei atzeres, if this right there was the Shechita of the kivsei atzeres, which meant that the shtei halechem and the kivsei atzeres are nizkakin, right? They are dependent on each other. The shtei halechem got lost. Now you do the zerika sadam of the kivsei atzeres as right with the intention of kivsei atzeres. We're saying you're gonna have to burn the kivsei atzeres since the shtei halechem is lost and there's nothing you can do about it. You're telling me that if you did it properly, you'd have to destroy it, and yet if you do it improperly, now you can eat it? How does that make sense? When done properly, it's unkosher, but when done improperly, it's kosher? Is there such a thing? She'eino kosher lishmo, that when done properly, it's non-kosher, v'kosher shelo lishmo, but when done improperly, it's kosher? V'lo, 1 second. Why are you so sure? Is there not? Korban Pesach, Kodem Chatzos. Korban Pesach, 14th day of Nisan, before Chatzos, it's not yet time to offer it. The window of offering, the narrow window of offering the Korban Pesach in the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan has not yet opened. De'eno kosher lishmo, if you slaughter at that point a Korban Pesach as a Korban Pesach, unkosher. V'kosher shelo lishmo, but if you slaughter it as a shlamim, kosher. Hachi ka'amina, look, what I'm asking is the following. Yesh chadavar, is there such a thing, shenira lishmo, that is actually fit lishmo, right? The kivsei atzeres, it's right now Shavuos. The kivsei atzeres should be offered lishmo. The window is open for the kivsei atzeres to be offered lishmo. The nidche belishmo. But however, because the shtei halechem got lost, it's now nidche. It's now unusable because the shtei halechem got lost. Ve'eno kosher lishmo, v'kosher shelo lishmo. And we're saying, is it possible that now, if you do zerika sadam for the kivsei atzeres as kivsei atzeres, it would be possible since the shtei halechem was lost, but if you do it shelo lishmo, it would be kosher? Velo, what, do we not have such a situation? Ve'arei pesach acher zmano b'shar yemos ashana. What about a korban pesach? Right, it would check all those boxes. Well, what were the boxes? Shenira lishmo, right? They have the korban pesach that the window was open on the 14th of Nisan and it was fit to be offered. But acher zmano, but you didn't offer it during that window, so therefore it was now nidche, and now you can no longer offer it as a korban pesach because the window has closed. And we're saying that it is, right, lishmo would be not kosher. You can't offer it as a korban pesach anymore, but you can offer it as a shlamim. So this is what I'm saying to you. Yesh l'chadavar, is there such a thing? Shenira lishmo, which is fit to be offered. V'nishchad lishmo, and was offered lishmo, such as the kivsei atzeres. It was Shavuos. The kivsei atzeres were slaughtered as kivsei atzeres. V'nidche lishmo, but then they got nidched, they got pushed off because the shtei halechem got lost. V'eno kosher lishmo, and if you do the zerika sadam as shtei halechem, it would be not kosher. V'kosher shelo lishmo, and shelo lishmo would be kosher, right? We're saying that, are we suggesting that the kivsei atzeres that now, right? Again, you slaughtered the kivsei atzeres at the proper time, but then it became nidcha because the shtei Halechem got lost. Right, so you had the kivsei atzeres, it was its proper time, the window was open on Shavuos, you slaughtered it during that window, but then it became nidcha because the shtei Halechem got lost. We're saying if you do the zerika sadam as kivsei atzeres, it would be possible, but you're suggesting that if you do it shelo lishmah, it would be kosher. We're saying velo, right? Now that kind of, the Pesach analogy has run its course, right? Because when it comes to the Korban Pesach, if the window for Korban Pesach was open and you actually slaughtered it as a Korban Pesach, and then it became nidche, there wouldn't be any, you'd kind of be stuck. However, the Gemara suggests, Velo v'arei toda. What about a Korban Toda? We learned yesterday, friends, right? Remember we learned yesterday? If you slaughter a Korban Toda, and then one of the breads breaks, we said all the breads now are apostle, so you do the zerika sadam as a shlomim, and then you can eat it. So here we have an analogous scenario. You have a korban that was able to be offered. It was slaughtered as a korban toda. It then became nidche because one of its breads broke. And we're saying, so you can no longer do zerika sadam as a korban toda, but you can do it as a korban shlomim, and then you can eat it. Just like over here, you can't do the zerika sadam anymore as the kivsei atzeres, but you do it as shelo lishmah, you can eat it, right? Wrong. Shiny toda d'achmana kai shlomim. Korban toda is different because korban toda really is a type of shlomim, right? Zevach todas shlomov. It's a type of shlomim, and therefore you can do the zerika sadam as a shlomim because it is a type of shlomim. I imagine that there is a Tosfos about this, but Tosfos I didn't go super deep into this, but I imagine that we could say the same thing like we said the other day, which is, well, isn't this also a shlomim? But this is not a private shlomim; it's a public shlomim. This is also not kachim kalim; it's kachim kachim. I suspect that the same answer could work here as well, friends. We did it. We learned Daf Mem Zayin of Menachos. It was a difficult daf, very technical, very, very difficult, detailed daf. Friends, on Daf Mem Zayin of Masechta Menachos, we learned about Shechita and zerika of kivsei atzeres. We said, if the Shechita and the zerika are lishmah, so then the Shtei Halechem is kadosh, and it is mutter for the Kohanim to eat, right? If the Shechita and the zerika of the kivsei atzeres was a-okay, it is matir the Shtei Halechem to the Kohanim. If both the Shechita and the zerika are not lishmah, well then the Shtei Halechem are not kadosh, and they're asur la'achila. They are simply kadosh kedushas damim, which is also ba'ana, but you can be poda it, and then you can eat it as chulin. Now, if the Shechita was lishmah, but the zerika was shelo lishmah, so Reb Shimon says that it's not kadosh, it's kedushas damim, and again, you can't eat it, but you would be poda it. Rebbe says it's kadosh and not kadosh. Abai says, what does it mean it's kadosh and not kadosh? It means that it's kedushas damim. Isn't that the same thing as Reb Shimon? We had said the difference is that Abai would say that it would be pasul biyotze. That's the difference. That normally kedushas damim, you can go in the azar, outside the azar. It's not kadosh kedushas aguf. It's not kachim kachim. So go inside the azar, outside the azar. But in this case, it would not be allowed to leave the azar according to Abai. Rava says that what kadosh and not kadosh means, it means that it's actually kadosh with kedushas haguf, just that it's going to be asur ba'achila because the zerika sadam was shelo lishma. Okay, that was basically the gist of that first section. Then we got into a whole long discussion about if the shtei Halechem can be eaten when the zerika is not lishma. We said, I don't understand, who's the question according to? We said both according to Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, and according to Rebbe, you can't eat it. So we got into a whole discussion about a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva in Meila in this brisa about the shtei. Oh, I got to pull out mine about the shtei Halechem and if it was yotze and then pigul and how does it apply here? And in the end, it was confusing, and the Gemara basically said we don't actually know. Okay, and finally, if kivsei atzeres can be eaten, if the shtei Halechem gets lost, is there any way for us to be able to salvage the kivsei atzeres, to be able to eat them since the shtei Halechem got lost? And we said yesterday the halacha is that, or 2 days ago, that the halacha, I don't remember, that the halacha is yotz, I think yesterday, that the halacha is yotz to the beis hasreifa. Is there any way, if we maybe do zerika sadam shelo lishma, maybe we can eat as a shlomim? Ultimately we said no. You're just going to have to burn it. Friends, that was Daf Mem Zayin, the 47 Masechta Menachos. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers!